I grew up knowing that my father was a man of grand gestures but shallow commitments. He had a knack for sweeping in like a hero when it suited him, only to disappear when it mattered most. My childhood was punctuated by the sound of his booming laugh, the rustle of expensive gifts, and the ache of his absence when life got tough. It didn't help that his affection seemed to flow freely toward my stepsister Chloe, a spoiled brat with a permanent smirk and a talent for manipulation. Chloe came into my life when I was 12. My father had married her mother, a polished woman with a taste for designer handbags and martinis, after my parents' messy divorce. They moved into a big suburban house while my mom and I scraped by in a modest apartment. Chloe was the kind of girl who thrived in that environment. She had a way of tilting her head and fluttering her eyelashes that made adults bend over backward to please her. My father, unfortunately, was no exception. By the time I hit my late 20s, I'd stopped looking for validation from him. After years of feeling like the afterthought, I decided to carve out my own path. I worked tirelessly, juggling 2 jobs and living frugally to save up for a place of my own. When I finally signed the deed to a modest but cozy condo, it felt like the culmination of every sleepless night and every sacrifice I'd made. The condo was my sanctuary. It wasn't huge or luxurious, but it was mine. I'd painted the walls a warm, earthy beige, picked out furniture at thrift stores, and decorated with plants that I somehow managed to keep alive. I finally felt at peace, free from the shadow of Chloe and the constant reminder of my father's favoritism. But peace doesn't last long when you're tethered to people who don't understand boundaries. One lazy Saturday morning, as I sipped coffee and watched the sunlight spill into my living room, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. It was a rare occurrence, which immediately set me on edge. Stopping by later with Chloe. Hope that's okay. Got a surprise for you. A surprise? From my father. That phrase had never meant anything good. Still, I tried to quell the anxiety bubbling in my chest. Maybe it was harmless. Maybe he was bringing over some old family photos or a random knick-knack he thought I'd like. Later that afternoon, I cleaned up the condo a bit, making sure everything looked presentable. By the time the knock came at the door, I was ready with a polite smile. I opened it to find my father grinning, a suitcase in one hand and Chloe perched behind him like a smug cat. "Surprise!" he boomed, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. What's going on?" I asked, glancing at the suitcase. "Chloe's moving in for a bit." My smile froze. "What?" "Oh, don't be dramatic," Chloe chimed in, sauntering past me and plopping onto my couch like she owned it. "Dad said you'd be thrilled to help me out." The air felt thick, the way it does before a storm. "Help you out how?" "She needs a place to stay while she figures things out," my father said, brushing off my question like it was nothing. "Her lease ended, and the new place isn't ready yet. I told her she could crash here. You've got plenty of room." Plenty of room? My condo was a 1-bedroom. Chloe's presence would mean either she took the couch indefinitely, or I gave up my bedroom. "I wish you'd asked me first," I said, my voice measured. "Oh, come on, it's family," he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder like that would solve everything. "You're always so independent. I figured you wouldn't mind helping your sister out." "She's not my sister," I shot back before I could stop myself. My father's face hardened for a moment, but he quickly replaced it with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Well, stepsister then, don't be difficult." Chloe smirked, leaning back on the couch. "Relax. It's not a big deal. You won't even notice I'm here." But I would notice. I already noticed the way she kicked off her shoes onto my carpet, how she picked up the remote without asking, how she glanced around my home with barely concealed disdain. I stood there, trying to process what was happening. My sanctuary, the space I'd worked so hard to create, was no longer mine. It was as if they'd stormed in and claimed it without a second thought. And as my father and Chloe started unpacking the suitcase, chatting away like they'd just done me a huge favor, I realized this wasn't just a surprise visit. It was a full-blown invasion. The first few days of Chloe's stay were a nightmare wrapped in a bad sitcom. She treated my home like a personal playground, leaving her mess everywhere, commandeering the TV, and throwing her things around like my condo was some kind of oversized storage locker. My frustration simmered, but I bit my tongue, hoping this temporary arrangement would sort itself out quickly. It didn't. One morning, I woke up to find my living room in chaos. Empty takeout containers were scattered on the coffee table, a half-empty wine glass balanced precariously on the armrest of my favorite chair, and Chloe's clothes were draped over the back of the couch. It was as if a tornado had blown through, leaving nothing but destruction and the faint smell of overpriced perfume. "Chloe!" I called, storming down the hallway. "What the hell is this?" She emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in one of my towels, one of my new towels, her phone glued to her ear. "Relax," she said, waving me off. "I'll clean it up later." "Later? It's been 3 days of later." She rolled her eyes and ducked back into the bathroom, shutting the door in my face. I stormed into the kitchen, muttering under my breath, only to find my father perched at the counter with a mug of my coffee in hand. He didn't look the least bit fazed by the disaster Chloe had left behind. "Morning," he said cheerfully, as if we were at a family brunch instead of my invaded condo. "Morning!" I snapped, opening the cupboard to grab a mug of my own. My hand froze mid-reach when I realized half my pantry was empty. The cereal, snacks, and even my emergency stash of chocolates were gone. "Dad, what's going on? She's treating this place like it's hers." He chuckled, as if I'd made some kind of joke. "Oh, don't be so uptight. Chloe's going through a rough patch. She just needs a little time to get back on her feet." "She's not getting back on her feet. She's wrecking my place." He sipped his coffee, unfazed. "You've got to understand. She's had it harder than you. You're always so independent, so capable. She's not like that. She needs support." I stared at him, incredulous. "Support? This isn't support, Dad. It's enabling." He set his mug down, suddenly serious. "You've got to stop being so selfish. She's your sister." "Stepsister," I corrected, the word sharp on my tongue. "Family," he said firmly. "And family helps family. You've got a good thing going here, a nice place. You should be grateful and willing to share." Grateful. That word made my blood boil. I'd worked my butt off for this condo. Every inch of it was a testament to my independence and determination. But somehow, in his eyes, I was the selfish one for wanting to protect what I'd built. Later that day, the true extent of their entitlement came crashing down. I returned home after running errands to find Chloe sitting on the couch with her legs propped up on the coffee table, a smug grin on her face. "Pack your bags," she said, not even looking up from her phone. "Excuse me?" "Dad and I talked. He said I should have the bedroom, and you can sleep on the couch. It's only fair since I'm going to be living here for a while." My chest tightened. "Living here? Chloe, this is my condo." She shrugged, her smirk growing wider. "Dad said you'd understand. He told me he was the one who gave you the money for this place anyway, so technically, it's his. And if it's his, then it's mine too." I couldn't breathe. The audacity of it all rendered me momentarily speechless. My father had contributed nothing to this condo, not a penny. I bought it entirely on my own, from the down payment to the closing costs. "Get out of my room," I managed to say through gritted teeth. Her grin faltered for a split second before she scoffed. "Whatever, just don't get in my way, okay? I'm already thinking of how to redecorate. This place could use some work." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My heart raced as a mix of anger, disbelief, and betrayal churned in my gut. But in that moment, something clicked. I was done. Done being the doormat. Done letting them treat me like a guest in my own home. It was time to remind Chloe and my father whose name was on the deed. After Chloe's bold declaration that she was taking over my bedroom and redecorating my condo, I knew things were about to escalate. But even in my wildest nightmares, I couldn't have predicted just how far she would go. My condo, The space I'd fought so hard to call my own quickly became a battlefield, and Chloe played dirty. The next morning, I woke up to find my bedroom door locked. Locked. My bedroom. I rattled the handle and banged on the door. "Chloe!" I shouted. "Open this door right now!" Through the door, I heard a lazy reply. "I'm getting dressed. Geez, relax." "When did you lock my door?" I demanded. "I put a new lock on it last night. Dad said it was fine," she said nonchalantly, finally opening the door. She leaned against the frame in one of my robes, her hair wrapped in one of my towels. "You did what?" I hissed, my voice trembling with barely controlled rage. She gave me a bored look. "It's my space now. I needed privacy. Besides, you've got the couch." I stared at her, my blood boiling. "You're unbelievable, Chloe." She shrugged and walked back into my bedroom, shutting the door in my face. I marched to the kitchen, barely resisting the urge to punch a hole in the wall. My father was sitting at the counter, flipping through a newspaper like nothing was amiss. "Dad," I said, my voice sharp, "she's locked me out of my own bedroom. You cannot possibly think this is okay." He glanced up, looking mildly annoyed. "She just needs some time to settle in. Stop making everything a big deal." "A big deal?" I nearly shouted. "This is my home. She can't just waltz in and take over like she owns the place." "You don't need to be so territorial," he said dismissively, turning a page in his newspaper. "She's family. You should be more accommodating." I could barely contain my fury, but I bit my tongue. I needed to bide my time and approach this strategically. Over the next week, Chloe made herself more comfortable and more intolerable. She hosted loud video calls at all hours, blasting music while she lounged on the couch. She piled her shoes and clothes in the living room, as if the condo were her personal dressing room. I came home one evening to find her throwing a party with a group of her equally insufferable friends. "Oh, you're back," she said casually, handing one of her friends a drink. "Don't worry, we're keeping it low-key." "You're throwing a party in my home without asking?" I asked, incredulous. She rolled her eyes. "Chill out, it's just a few people. You can hang out if you want, but you should probably change into something less depressing." I clenched my fists and stormed into the kitchen, where my father was once again enjoying himself as if this were all perfectly normal. "Dad, are you seriously okay with this?" I asked, gesturing toward the chaos in the living room. He shrugged, taking a sip of his beer. "She's young. Let her have some fun. You should loosen up, too." "Unbelievable," I muttered, grabbing my coat. "I can't deal with this." I spent the evening at a coffee shop, fuming and plotting. Enough was enough. The breaking point came when I noticed some of my things were missing. First, it was small items. A favorite mug, a decorative pillow, some framed photos. But then, it was my clothes, my jewelry, and even a pair of shoes I hadn't worn in months. I confronted Chloe directly. "Where are my things?" I demanded, barging into my bedroom, now her bedroom. She looked up from her phone, unbothered. "What are you talking about?" "My clothes, my jewelry, they're gone. I want them back." "Oh, those? I'm borrowing them," she said with a shrug. "You never wear half that stuff anyway. Don't be so stingy." "Borrowing? Without asking? That's stealing, Chloe!" She rolled her eyes as if I were the unreasonable one. "God, you're so dramatic. I'll give it back eventually." At that moment, I realized there was no reasoning with her. She truly believed she was entitled to everything I owned. I called my best friend Mia that night, venting my frustrations. "This has gone beyond disrespect," I told her. "She's treating me like I'm a guest in my own home, and my dad, he's enabling her every step of the way." "You can't let them get away with this," Mia said. "Do you have proof that the condo's yours?" "Yes, I have the title deed," I said. "Then use it," she urged. "You've got the legal high ground here. It's time to remind them who's really in charge." Her words lit a fire in me. I pulled out my file folder with the deed, flipping through the crisp pages that bore my name and my name alone. This condo was mine, no matter what lies my father and Chloe were telling themselves. I decided to consult my lawyer friend Daniel just to make sure I had all my bases covered. After explaining the situation, he confirmed that I had every right to evict Chloe. "You've got solid ground here," Daniel said. "They don't have a leg to stand on. Just make sure you document everything, texts, photos, anything that shows what they've been doing, and when you're ready, serve them notice." I spent the next few days gathering evidence. I photographed the mess Chloe left behind, recorded her parties from the hallway, and saved every obnoxious text she sent me. Every petty remark and audacious action fueled my resolve. On the day of Chloe's next party, I walked into the condo with the title deed in hand and a determination I'd never felt before. The chaos of her friends' laughter and music filled the air, but I wasn't there to argue. I was there to take back what was mine. My patience had worn thin, and it was time to deliver a reality check they wouldn't forget. The moment I walked into the condo, the noise hit me like a wall. Laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses filled the space that used to feel like a sanctuary. Chloe's party was in full swing, and my living room, my haven, looked like it had been taken hostage by strangers. People I didn't know lounged on my couch, leaned against my walls, and trampled my carpet with muddy shoes. I tightened my grip on the folder in my hand, the title deed to the condo neatly tucked inside. It wasn't just a piece of paper, it was my ticket to reclaiming my life. Chloe spotted me from across the room and smirked, waving a wine glass at me like a queen acknowledging a peasant. "Oh, you're back! Don't worry, we saved some wine for you," she said with a laugh, earning chuckles from her circle of friends. I ignored her and stepped into the middle of the room. "Everyone, can I have your attention?" I said loudly, my voice cutting through the noise. The chatter quieted as heads turned toward me. Chloe frowned, her smirk faltering for the first time. "What are you doing?" she asked, annoyance creeping into her voice. I held up the folder. "This," I said, shaking it slightly, "is the title deed to this condo. My condo, the one I worked my butt off to buy, and the one that has my name and only my name on it." A murmur ran through the crowd, and Chloe's face paled. She tried to recover, rolling her eyes dramatically. "Oh, come on! No one cares about your stupid paperwork. We're just having a little fun." I stepped closer, my voice steady but firm. "Fun? You mean throwing parties without asking, locking me out of my own bedroom and stealing my belongings? That's your idea of fun?" Chloe's friends exchanged awkward glances, clearly uncomfortable with the direction this was going. My father, who was perched on a bar stool near the kitchen, stood up. "Let's not make a scene," he said, his tone placating. I turned to him, the years of frustration and anger bubbling to the surface. "A scene? You mean like the scene you and Chloe have been creating in my home for weeks? Let me remind you, Dad, this isn't your house, and it's not Chloe's either. You don't get to waltz in here and decide how things work." "Stop being so dramatic," Chloe snapped, stepping forward. "Dad told me I could stay here. He helped you buy this place, didn't he?" "No, Chloe," I said, my voice icy. "He didn't. Not a single penny came from him. I bought this condo on my own. The title deed has my name on it, not his, and definitely not yours." I opened the folder and pulled out the deed, holding it up for everyone to see. "Here's the proof. My name, my property, and I have every legal right to evict you." The room fell silent. The smug look on Chloe's face evaporated, replaced by panic. "You wouldn't," she said, her voice wavering. I raised an eyebrow. "Try me." "Dad!" she cried, turning to him like a child begging for a lifeline. "Do something!" But even my father looked rattled. "Come on, sweetheart," he said awkwardly, trying to calm her down. "Maybe we should talk about this." "No," I interrupted, my voice firm. "We're not talking about this. I've been more than patient. Chloe, you have until the end of tonight to pack up your things and leave. If you're not gone by morning, I'll call the police and have you removed for trespassing." "You're unbelievable!" Chloe shrieked, her face turning red. "After everything Dad's done for you, this is how you treat us? You're such a selfish, bitter—" "Enough!" I snapped, my tone echoing through the room. You've taken advantage of me, my home, and my kindness for far too long. I'm done being the pushover. You're not my responsibility, and you certainly don't get to dictate how I live in my own home." Chloe stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. The crowd, clearly embarrassed by the spectacle, began to disperse. "Party's over," I said firmly, glaring at the stragglers. "Everyone out." People shuffled toward the door, some murmuring apologies as they passed me. Chloe stood frozen in place, her fury bubbling beneath the surface, but she didn't argue. Even she seemed to realize she'd lost. My father hesitated, his face a mixture of anger and shame. "You didn't have to handle it like this," he muttered. I looked at him, my expression unyielding. "I wouldn't have had to handle it at all if you hadn't enabled her behavior. You both owe me an apology, but I'm not holding my breath." Without another word, he grabbed his coat and followed the others out the door. Chloe lingered for a moment, glaring daggers at me. "You're going to regret this!" she spat, before storming off to pack her things. I stood in the now empty living room, the quiet settling over me like a balm. For the first time in weeks, my home felt like mine again. When Chloe finally dragged her suitcase out the door an hour later, she didn't say goodbye. And I didn't care. I locked the door behind her, leaning against it with a sigh of relief. My sanctuary had been restored, and I'd reclaimed more than just my condo. I'd reclaimed my voice, my boundaries, and my peace. The morning after Chloe stormed out, I woke up to a blissful silence that felt foreign after weeks of chaos. The air in my condo was lighter, as if her departure had lifted some invisible weight. I brewed a cup of coffee and sat on the couch, finally able to enjoy the peace I'd fought so hard to reclaim. As I stared out the window, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my father. "You really didn't have to embarrass Chloe like that. Family doesn't treat each other this way." I read the message twice, my anger simmering, but no longer overwhelming. For once, I felt no urge to explain myself or seek his approval. Instead, I simply replied, "Family doesn't take advantage of each other either. If you can't respect my boundaries, we have nothing to discuss." I hit send and put my phone down. His silence after that reply said more than any follow-up could have. Over the next few days, I made it a point to reclaim my space, both physically and emotionally. I cleaned every corner of the condo, scrubbing away the remnants of Chloe's presence. The bedroom, once a battlefield of locked doors and stolen privacy, became my sanctuary again. I rearranged the furniture, bought new bedding, and even treated myself to a few decorative pieces I'd been eyeing for months. It felt empowering, like I was taking back control of my life. Chloe, of course, didn't disappear without a trace. A few mutual acquaintances told me she was staying with a friend for the time being, bitterly recounting how I'd thrown her out like trash. I couldn't bring myself to care. Even my father tried to guilt me, showing up unannounced one afternoon. "I can't believe you'd do this to your own sister," he began as soon as I opened the door. "She's not my sister," I said firmly, standing in the doorway to block him from coming in. "And this isn't up for discussion." "Do you know how much I've done for you over the years?" he pressed, his voice rising. I met his gaze, unflinching. "No, Dad. Let's talk about how much I've done for myself. I worked for everything I have, and I won't let you or Chloe take that away from me." His face twisted with frustration, but I didn't budge. "I think you should leave now," I said calmly. For the first time, he seemed to realize I wasn't the pushover he'd always taken me for. Without another word, he turned and walked away. As the weeks passed, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the disrespect, and the audacity were hard to swallow, but they'd taught me something important. I didn't owe anyone my peace or my home. Setting boundaries wasn't selfish. It was necessary. I reconnected with old friends, including Mia, who'd been my sounding board through the chaos. One evening, over drinks at her apartment, she raised her glass with a grin. "To taking back what's yours," she said. "To never letting anyone walk all over me again," I replied, clinking my glass against hers. We laughed, but I meant every word. A month after Chloe left, I received a final piece of closure. A handwritten card arrived in the mail from my stepmother. I heard about what happened. I won't pretend Chloe was in the right, but please know she's been struggling more than you realize. I hope one day you can forgive her. Take care of yourself. Patricia. I stared at the card for a long moment, feeling an odd mixture of vindication and pity. I didn't respond, but I tucked the card away in a drawer. Maybe one day I'd revisit it, but for now, I wasn't ready to extend forgiveness to someone who hadn't asked for it. My condo became more than just a home after that ordeal. It became a symbol of my independence, my strength, and my refusal to compromise my values for anyone, not even family. And as I sat on my couch that evening, the golden light of the setting sun streaming through the windows, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. 6 months later, life had settled into a steady rhythm. My condo was once again my sanctuary, filled with laughter from friends and quiet moments that felt like pure luxury. I'd even started a blog about setting boundaries and reclaiming independence, sharing my story with others who felt trapped by toxic family dynamics. To my surprise, the posts gained traction, and strangers from all over shared their own experiences in the comments. One evening, as I scrolled through the heartfelt messages, I noticed a familiar name pop up: Chloe. Her comment was brief. I read this and realized how much I messed up. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, emotions swirling. I didn't reply, at least, not yet, but for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope that maybe, someday, things could be different. For now, though, I was content with the life I'd reclaimed,